So, welcome everyone to, are we on session three?
Two.
Two, to
Yep.
section two of Tools for Empowering Teams. We're going to spend some time together until the 10th of April, once a week, for an hour exploring tools that help our teams communicate. And this is just our funding disclaimer that the views expressed within today's presentation do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Health and Human Services. Next slide. Always, if we want addiction destigmatized, we need to use a language that's unified. So this refers to just using recovery-friendly language and never describing somebody as their disease or their diagnosis, and using person-first language. And this is your pathway to TA. We've gone through this in the first session, but just remember that outside of trainings like this, that we do offer more direct or intimate technical assistance, meaning you can submit a request for support. We pair you up with one of our team members or a consultant, and then you work together to solve a problem or build your capacity or answer questions. And then I did want to note that our university rules do not allow us to use or to accept the AI assistance. I just saw one pop up into the chat. And so if you do use AI technology to help yourself out, I appreciate that and think it's a wonderful thing, but I think our larger systems have a little time to catch up to say, what does this mean? So if you don't mind removing the AI assistant from the room, that would be fantastic. I tend to go through once we get started and remove those on my own. So if you can go ahead and do it, that would be great. Let's see, housekeeping notes for today. So just try to keep your line muted when Matt is talking, but we will have lots of opportunities to unmute and share. We want these to be engaging sessions. During the presentation, you can submit any feedback or questions into the chat, and I'll try to capture those and pause to respond if needed. Otherwise, always feel free to unmute yourself or use the raise hand function. And then at the end of the series in April, we will have a short evaluation so that you can tell us how we're doing and if you enjoyed these sessions. And with that, I think I'm going to just hand it over to Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. It's great to see everybody. Thank you all for being here today. We've got a nice, healthy group of folks, so it's great to have you all on board. We're going to continue with our sequence. We have this idea of kind of recapping what we did a little bit, learning a tool or two, maybe having some interactions around the tool, some questions, and just some dialogue around the tools, maybe give you a little bit of direction to maybe sketch out that tool or try it for yourself. So what I had in mind for today was that we would come back to one of the tools that we talked about last time, which was the Know Your Culture tool, and take some time to explore it, to explore the elements of it a little bit. As you recall, this is the idea when we're thinking about how to know the people with whom we're working. We talked about the empathy map and values alignment and how to kind of know your own culture, your own organizational culture. If you can understand your own culture and understand the cultures that you interact with, we're all a part of multiple cultures, multiple different kinds of groups or organizations that have cultures, beliefs and values and ways of seeing and doing and understanding life in the world. So the idea here is to think about your own organizational culture a little bit and to explore these questions. So these were these questions that we came up with. Where have we been? Where are we going? What do we do? How do we do it? And why do we do it? So one way to, and then a why statement idea we talked about, which is, we do X so that Y. So, what do we do and why do we do it, which is built into those questions there. And how do these how do our answers impact how we see our team? So within our team, what is our story? How do we know our culture if we were to answer all of these questions? So one of the things that I think is helpful is to just kind of think about this and to I'd like to have us do this together today, to actually have you kind of, when we talk about using these tools and sketching them out, one way to do this one with these questions is to just draw a timeline, right? And so I would encourage you all, if you're up for it, to just take a piece of paper, set it up horizontally, long way, right? And then just draw a big arrow across the center. And then we're going to kind of think about these different questions that relate to these know your culture tool questions. The where, what, how, why, and where again questions. And I'll get to why the where is on both ends in just a minute. And think about this as a timeline. And maybe some of you have seen timelines for organizations. Maybe you have one. Have you ever seen those? I like them on websites. Sometimes an organization will, in the kind of about us section of a website, sometimes they'll have a timeline which tells their story. Here's when we started. Here's when we grew from the first person who started to when we got a grant and hired 3 people and moved to a new office. And here's when we started this program or that service. And it's a nice timeline which helps you to understand what they were doing. It also helps you understand the mission and the vision and the values around the organization or the program. So it's really helpful to get a sense of the culture. I find those to be a really nice way to understand a program or an organization's culture. So the idea here would be for us to kind of walk through these questions and maybe have a little bit of a conversation about these things too. So we could start by just doing this in sequence, and we would start by where have we been? Where did we get started? What's our origin story? Sometimes when we think about characters from novels or films, right? What's the origin story of a particular interesting character? Where do they come from? How did they come to think and believe and interact with people in the way that they do? How did they get there? So if I were to ask you, if we got on an elevator together, and let's say we were going to a conference meeting and it was on the 17th floor and we got on in the lobby, so we've got a little bit of time, but not too much time. Let's say it's not a fast elevator. And I said, where does your where have you been with your service or your organization? Where did it start? What would you say? What would be your elevator speech in terms of where you come from? Does anyone have one and how you might describe that they would like to share with us? How would you answer that? Where does your service or your program come from? Where has it been in the past?
I can go if no one else wants to go.
Sure.
Um, we started in 2014 after I started the organization after my son died from a heroin overdose. And a bunch of parents came to me and said, we've been going through it too, and we didn't know because we weren't talking about it.
Yeah.
So I started in my living room as a support group.
Yeah.
And over the years, we got some county funding, and now we're getting grants, and we have a reentry program, we have peer support program, we have social activities, we have a care kit program that we give hygiene product bags to recovery houses, and we're looking in this next year maybe to expand into a second county.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Stacy, let me say I'm sorry you lost your son first.
Thank you.
And
That's why I'm sad. Friday will be the 10-year anniversary.
Oh, okay. All right.
For me.
Well, we understand much more clearly now what that blue meant then. So thank you for Thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you.
When what you just did was a powerful example of this kind of cultural description, because if we listen to what you just did, where you started, I mean, you got me in your living room. I had this clear image of your living room, and you with some other parents trying to struggle through really painful things, and getting started there, helping each other, and then and then and then the how of getting a grant, getting some resources from the county, I think you said it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the what, here are the things that we started to do, right? Across time. I was just sort of seeing the kind of the flow chart with these pictures of these different things happening as you were talking about it. You were really telling me how your culture got built, how and where it comes from, the roots of it, the roots of the beliefs around trying to support and be protective and preventative. Yeah. Courtney has a hand up. So Courtney, is it in relation to what Stacy was sharing? If it's in relation to another idea, I want to stick with what Stacy's sharing for a minute. But if it's in relation to what Stacy's talking about, then please do share, or we'll wait, whichever it is.
It is not in relation to what Stacy was sharing.
Okay. Well, we'll hold it for a minute then. We'll come right back to you once we've completed this initial conversation. So thank you. We'll come back to you, Courtney. So other reactions as you think about this, when we start to look at this timeline and this kind of, where does it come from? Where have we been? Any other thoughts in reaction to Stacy's sharing?
Good morning, everyone. Stacy, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your journey with us, also of your organization and everything. And I did throw in the chat that he was able to bring that love and support into his community. So at least there was that to be done, and you guys are carrying on with that. So, definitely starting from the hard place and getting up to where, you guys are now, getting those grants, getting everything, that you guys have now that your community probably didn't have before. So that's a big journey from the where to where, so thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah, well said, Silva. I agree that is yeah, that is, and if you're looking at the chat, Stacy, there's some people sort of sharing and appreciating you in the chat as well. So hopefully you're aware of the chat. And I think that's very true, right? It's a clear, strong mission and vision around the meaning and purpose here. So yeah, well said. Anyone else? Other comments about Stacy sharing and this idea of reflecting on a culture by talking about where you've been. People know something about who you are as your culture, your identity, your values. This is a clear statement of values based upon where Stacy had been with that journey. Anyone else want to share on that? Again, Michelle, same thing with you in relation to this topic. Please do feel free to share. Or we'll hold if it's a different topic. All right. Well, thank you for that, and thanks, Stacy. Appreciate you sharing. Why don't we go back to Courtney, and then we'll go to Michelle, because I know both parties had their hands up. So
I'm sorry, I couldn't unmute. I'm sorry.
you're good.
I got it. I'll wait until you're ready.
You're good. Go ahead.
Okay. No, my sincere condolences to Stacy. I totally get it. March 28th will be 5 years that I lost my son. For me, I guess my journey was a little bit different. When I started this work 10 years prior to him passing. And, we talk about the where, the what, the culture, and who we are and why we're doing what we are doing today. It's because of our lived experiences, right? And that's what makes us those peers. And you have those feelings and the memories of, I don't want another family to go through this. I don't want another person to have to struggle to navigate the system, to get assistance and get help. And we want to make sure that we're able to get them connected to the services that they need. I'll stop there.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle. And so if we think about that, and again, also sorry for your loss of your son as well. I if we think about that timeline idea, right, this would be a different origin story. Some similar events, of course, in terms of the painful loss, and then yours, you started doing the work before that, and so the origin was some other initial stuff that is happening, or that you were seeing, or that you were involved with, that got you going with this work. And then of course your personal loss connecting to that, and then so these steps in the sequence of where you've been, um, um, sort of parallel and similar, some different components, which probably create, all cultures, organizational cultures are different because of different experiences. Yours is a little different than Stacy's, even though they have deeply powerful roots that are very close to each other, right? They're still going to be different because of different people with different experiences and some different parts, different chapters in that story. So, yeah, thank you for that. Courtney, I don't want to miss you. I want to come back to you. Courtney, you wanted to share something earlier.
Hi, yes. My condolences to both women who openly shared, and thank you for your vulnerability uh, in this meeting. I would just, when we talk about know your culture, I am a woman in long-term recovery, and I struggled with substance use disorder for over 22 years. Um, and I now work for a 501c3 nonprofit organization by the name of Oxford House Inc. And we have upwards of 3,500 houses in the United States, and we're in 2 other countries. The second Oxford House was opened in 1975, and it is still open today. Um, and we're all over the United States. I'm very passionate about Oxford House, which is sober transitional living, because it is just one of the pieces that helped create a solid foundation for me to stand on, to lay on, to cry on, whatever that looked like for me, but it is part of my foundation. So I'm really, really passionate about it. And that is my where, what, how, why, and what. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's my little elevator speech.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, Courtney, you've probably heard this before, but if I was on the elevator and you were talking to me and you were carrying the kind of power that you carry in your voice, I don't think I'd get off at my floor. I'd stay on and I'd keep listening
Thank you.
because you have a compelling delivery in your messaging, and I just want to appreciate that. It's powerful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. So again, these elements, right? Thinking through, where have we been? If you want to understand anybody, any system, any organization, any culture, where has it been? Including countries and these cities and towns and communities. What have they gone through? What has this town gone through? What experiences has it had? These all impact its culture and how it sees itself, how it understands its purpose, its meaning in life. So the where have we been question is a really important one. Then if we think about the where are we going question, if this is aspirational on the other end of the continuum, for each of you to think, and if you're doing this exercise in sort of in a real sketch, to just jot some things down for yourself in terms of the key elements of where you've been that lead to your organizational culture. And we're using that word organizational very loosely if you're working independently on your own, if you're working as part of a broader team, or in Courtney's case, working as part of a very large organization that has many, many services across multiple countries, right? So from one person all the way up to international, we can think about organizational culture, right? And because everybody has one. So then where have we been, and then where are we going? We think about on the right side of that arrow, where is it that we want to get to over on the right? What are we aspiring to? So think about that for a minute, maybe jot some things down. if this journey of this organization, this program, um, uh, move forward toward a destination that we desire, how would we know if we looked around that we were there or that we were progressing toward it? With much of what we do, we don't ever get there, so to speak. We just make continuous progress, right? But what looks different as we make progress, as we move down that arrow to the right, to the where are we going? How do we know if we're in new territory that is in the desired direction, right? If we're out there on a hike and we get a little bit disoriented, how do we know that we're on course, that we've kind of found the path that's leading us toward the place where we want to go? So what kinds of things would be on the list for you, or what would you place in that space? Where are we trying to go? So think about that. And if you have a sharing that you'd like to offer, please do. Where are we going? How will we know that we're making progress toward our goals? What are those goals? What do we have as a mission? Anyone have any reflections they'd like to share on that?
Matt,
Yes.
uh, uh, what what I'd like to say is I don't really know. It's like it reminds me of like family history. It's like sometimes we don't talk about like what happened.
Yeah.
And in an organization, um, sometimes we're not really told about the history,
Right.
and then we work on the day-to-day stuff, and we have short-term goals and stuff, but unfortunately, sometimes I think we just don't know where we're going. And like I have deliverables or reports due and things like that, but that's the kind of the mechanics of it all. But
Yeah.
and then my work, I might know where my work is going, or at least I think I do, but then I don't know often how it connects to the larger organization or where the organization's going. So I think anyway, I'm just sharing that sometimes we just don't know. And
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a super important sharing, Mark. I think that's so true because we tend to we often ignore these cultural elements, or we don't value them enough. And maybe people who are in a position to share the story, like the origin story, perhaps are not valuing or prioritizing the sharing enough. Or, as you said, like with families, there are parts of our family stories that we don't know because they might be related to some pain or shame or something else. And so the story isn't told clearly enough. And so we're left in a confused state. Organizations are similar, right? When an organization has some history where there might be some struggles or some challenges, um, we don't really have origin stories, and we should. I mean, one of my goals today is for all of you to see the value in being able to know your cultural history, right? Every system has a cultural history. We should know them. If we don't, and someone else does, let's go ask them. Let's go talk to them. And they say, well, that doesn't matter. Let's just get down to work. Well, it really does matter because that's our root. That's kind of what fuels who we are and where we come from. We need to know it in order to be able to think about where you're going. And Mark, then reflecting on the other end of the spectrum, where are we going? Well, I've got deliverables and projects. Where am I going? I'm finishing my deliverables and projects. Not particularly inspiring, is it? Right? There's got to be something bigger, right? There's got to be something bigger. We collectively are moving towards something. This relates back to that values alignment tool that we talked about last time, that sheet that we shared with you with the workbook. And I know Chris was giving you access to that workbook again in the chat. So if we say, here we have values of my personal experience, and then we have values of my program or my broader community, are they in alignment? Does this program reflect who I am? Sometimes you've had this experience if you went on an interview or the first time you connected with a certain program where you said, oh, I feel at home here. I feel comfortable here. This place speaks my language, because you're probably seeing some cultural alignment, some values alignment, right? This place kind of connects to who I am and how I feel about my life. So we need to know those things. So those bookends need to be known. Where have we been? Where are we going? So that's, I think, incumbent upon leaders to share those things. And if you're in a system where you don't feel like you know those things, maybe there's a way you can raise your hand and say, I feel like I need to know those things or want to know those things. And it helps us to be able to connect to each other and to just kind of, there's nothing more powerful than a group of people who have a shared sense of where they want to go, right? A shared vision and priority. That's a really powerful thing. And organizations where their people are pulling in different directions are less powerful, less able to influence. Yeah. So that's a really good point you raised.
Just as a follow-up too, though, like if we get a little disillusioned if we don't have that vision, and we can have it even if the organization doesn't, or we can push the organization to sort of to have that. So I think it is important, as you say, to find that vision and that passion and to hold that beyond the report writing and the
Yeah.
drudgery of it all, because life gets a little long and arduous if we
Yeah.
don't do that. But it's frustrating sometimes too, though, that if we feel like we have our own vision and that's working for us, but then how does it fit with the organization? I think
Yeah, for sure. That's that alignment question. And that's why the why is next to the where on this line, right? So the why is next to the where, because why are we doing this? Where are we going? Those two questions are right next to each other. Like, what's the purpose? Where are we trying to go? I mean, if we're on a journey and you turn right at the intersection, why did you turn right? Well, because I'm trying to go somewhere. There's a reason why I'm doing this. It has a purpose. It's intentional. So are we being intentional as we take our turns on the course to get to something that's important? Sandra, you had something you wanted to share, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, with the where are we going, what really aligned with me and where I'm at with my organization, which is in mental health. We're lifting others up and going up from there and gaining knowledge and education to better serve individuals.
Yeah.
And also gaining more awareness on how to meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
And collaboration with community.
Yeah. So Sandra reminds me how looking at this culture and looking at this this continuum or this timeline is a way of emerging some mission statements or vision statements, because what you were just describing, Sandra, has kind of strong mission statement components in it, right? Like, why do we do what we do? Here's what we're about. Here's what we are dedicated to. So yeah, this is a nice exercise to kind of craft those things. I don't know if any of you have ever done the task of trying to come up with a mission statement with a group. It's really hard. It's really hard. And everyone has different ideas and different words mean different things to different people. And so tools like this can help you kind of come together and come up with ideas like what you were just sharing, which I think were strong. They're powerful ideas. Yeah, nice. All right, so that's the where and the where on both sides. The where have we been and the where are we going? And then we think about these items in the middle, the what, the how, and the why. And they are in an intentional sequence, right? So where are we going? What are we doing? That's kind of the specific things that we're doing. How are we doing it? What sort of a process do we use? I spend a lot of time exploring the what, the how, and the why in a lot of the work that I do. The why, kind of the mission, the reason, the vision, right? For the sense of purpose. The what, the nuts and bolts of what we're doing, right? We're delivering a certain service. We're providing a certain opportunity for individuals. We have a certain strategy that we use. We have certain tools that we use. We have certain kinds of meetings or supports that we're offering. And then the how is so the process for how we do those things, right? Well, we offer support. Well, tell me how you offer support. What's the process for how you do that, right? If we just said, well, we support people. Well, how do you do that? Well, we just support them. That would not be an adequate response, right? Well, what do you mean? How do you do it, right? What's the process that you use to be helpful to folks? So now it's kind of helpful to think about these other three steps in the sequence. So if you're continuing to sketch out this timeline and this sense of your culture, um, so answering the question, what do you do? So maybe it's a list of things. Maybe you think of it in terms of one thing. Tell me a little bit about that. Maybe just sketch something, and if you want to share with the group. So if someone asks you the question, what does your organization do? How do you answer that question? And while you're thinking about that, I just noticed Stacy's chat. The where we're going in say 5 years or 10 years. There's the there's the kind of realistic iterations, the maybe practical ones, and then there's the kind of ultimate goal vision, which I think is good when we think about how we do planning and how we think about the future. If you use any kind of logic models where you think about goals as immediate, midterm, and long term or ultimate goals, right? It's always good to have ultimate goals. Like if I run a food pantry, or I provide food, my ultimate goal is to end hunger in my community, right? That's my ultimate goal. And that's important, right? Because I'm going to shoot toward that. Will that happen anytime in the foreseeable future? I don't think so, but that's not the point. The point is we hold that and we keep pushing. So if we look to the end of this arrow and beyond the arrow, right, that's the ultimate goal, right? And I think we should all have those. So I appreciate that you had that. So somebody give me a sense of, if someone said, what do you do? What does your organization do? How do you answer them on the elevator? Does anybody have a way to do that? Ray, do you have a way to do that?
Yeah, I think for me, I've been asked that question multiple times. And I just break it down the best I can, especially because we do multiple things and have multiple programs. We have a living room, we have mobile crisis response team, and we have recovery support. So in short, I normally say we just give hope and save lives one person at a time. Is what we're trying to do. But we're also trying to, break stigma and bridge the gap for mental health and substance use. So for me, I just kind of explain what the living room does, what RSS do, and what mobile crisis response does, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like what happens there is you start with the what, we give hope, we save lives, we bridge the gap. This is what we do. And then that sort of begs the next question, which is, well, how do you give hope? How do you save lives? How do you bridge the gap? And then that's where you get into some of those nuts and bolts of the processes. What's the process? There's a process for how you give hope, right? You do certain things which can help people to experience more hope.
I agree. And for me, the why is always personal for me, and it's my lived experiences for why I do what I do. So that answer typically never changes. And then where would be like rural areas.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Now, Ray, do you work by yourself or as part of a larger team or organization?
So I don't work by myself when it comes to mobile crisis response. We do have a team, so we respond to the 988 calls. And then the living room, we also have a team of RSS that work in the living room. But as a RSS, I do individually see people on my own.
I was asking that question because you were talking about the why and it being a lived experience why, right? That's the meaning and purpose comes from the lived experience. And then if you're in a group of people, other people have different whys. Some of them, I mean, to some degree, lived experience is part of many people's why if they're doing something that's any kind of human service or support territory, right? So there's probably a why to some degree in there for a lot of people. And there are other reasons why, right? In the mix. So when you think about your team, do you ever compare your whys or share your whys with each other?
Oh, absolutely. We talk about it actually quite often. And then I also think your why can change.
Yeah, for
It doesn't
sure.
always stay the same.
Yeah. Yeah, some of you may have seen that when you start off with a powerful lived experience, why that lived experience doesn't ever disappear, but it might be that there are other whys that get added on to it, right? It gets kind of joined into some other elements that kind of create a more complex or different kind of a why for you.
I agree.
Yeah, that makes good sense. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for sharing that. What about other people when you think about this what, how, why business when someone asks you like that elevator speech? I keep using the elevator speech because it's a model that gets used a lot when we're thinking about how to effectively communicate because how do you frame things in simple terms that you can share in a brief period of time? So that's why I use that idea. Some of you have probably heard that before. Bianca wants to share something.
Yeah, so I work for a state Medicaid agency, and so I feel like the amount of services offered is an insane amount of services, and also I'm fairly certain that I don't quite know the breadth of everything that everyone does. So I think when somebody asks me about that, what I will give them like a very brief, I work in grants related to substance use. And then I may kind of turn the question back on them to get to kind of see what their agency does and how that kind of fits with how that could be complementary, I guess, in terms of services that we offer and how something that we have on board could be helpful for them.
Yeah. So if they say, "What do you do?" and then your answer could be, "Well, we do a whole bunch of stuff, some of which I don't even know anything about, and some of which you're quite familiar with, right?"
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. It also reminds me of how we connect to the more individual. We're kind of wired to connect to that. If someone sort of, if you were sort of talking about a big corporation, we wouldn't probably stay too interested if we just talked about the big corporation. That's why websites of big corporations don't have pictures of big buildings or crowds of people. They have pictures of individuals, right? Because we connect to the story of an individual. So your story might be, well, it's part of a big system, and here's what I do as part of that. Here's what I do in my part of that bigger system. But to the point we were talking about a little bit earlier, which is what Mark was saying, do you feel like you can represent the big system? Sometimes executives of big systems can do more to help all of the elements of the big system to have a collective sense of where, the culture. Here's who we are, here's where we've been, here's our story, here's what we do, here's how we do it. And it sounds like you could kind of benefit from more of that, more of a sense of like, what are we collectively? Gosh, I don't even know. Some of this stuff's totally foreign to me. But what's our collective purpose or value? You probably have some sense of that, but maybe there's places where you could know more about that.
I feel like just given the day, sometimes the answer to that is yes, that I'm a good representative, and sometimes not so much.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Depending. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Thank you. What are other people thinking about for your organization, your team, the what, the how, and the why? What do you do? How do you do it? And why do you do it? Who else has some thoughts on this?
Matt, I just wanted to offer up when we say, so a super common phrase, right, that we use, I hear all sorts of people use, but I find it especially prevalent in the recovery field is meet them where they're at. We say that with confidence. And I think it's really important to explore and verbalize what we mean by that. I think a lot of times when we say meet them where they're at, because it's become kind of a catchphrase, It gets lost on potential funders or stakeholders or people who
Yeah.
we might tug on their heartstrings a little more, if we kind of explain what that means versus using the catchphrase. And then too, it helps align our teams because meet them where they're at might mean something completely different to two people on the same team. And it helps us align, clarify, use expertise in the right areas, and avoid maybe misunderstandings for meet them where they're at. Maybe to somebody that means just a physical location, and then to others it means emotionally or intellectually or spiritually.
Yeah.
Just wanted to offer that.
Yeah, I think that's a super important idea, Chris. Meeting people where they're at, I think of as kind of a radical idea. I mean, we're not going to try to control or tell them what to do or advise. We might be offering some supports or advising or assisting, but it's a pretty radical idea that we're just going to try to sit with you wherever you are. That's that empathy. When we talked about that empathy map, I think that empathy map is a good tool for meeting people where they're at. What are they saying? What are they doing? What are they thinking and feeling? What are their goals? Particularly, as I said last time, like that goals idea. By meeting someone where they're at, I'm going to sit with what their goals are. And their goals might be very foreign to me, or might even be worrisome or troubling or uncomfortable for me. And how do I meet them where they're at? That's what I mean by radical, right? So if we're really doing it, we're saying, okay, I hear what your goals are, but what you really need to do is think about this. Well, I'm no longer meeting them where they're at. Now I'm telling them how they should see the world. So it's pretty radical to have that intensity of empathy and to really, yeah. So I like what you said, Chris, about how, we all say it. So when we all say something, it starts to get a bit vague and fuzzy and hard to hold on to. What do people think about that? How does that relate to this business about knowing your culture? Because the what and the how, you do these things and this might fit right into the how stuff. Well, how do you do it? Well, we meet people where they're at. Well, what does that mean exactly? So I see we have some things in the chat. Fatima has an idea. Means taking yourself and your personal opinions and putting them to the side. Just be with the participant, actively listening, judgment free, which is a pretty radical, powerful thing, isn't it? Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Fatima. Lisa has a thought.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm in a library, so I'm not sure.
For
me,
if someone starts shushing you, we'll understand.
For me, as a peer support, meet them where they're at. It's twofold. We are in the community, number one. So we go to homes. We go to wherever the client wants to meet us, whether it be McDonald's, the library, or whatever. So we physically meet them where they're at. But then we know our clients well, and we learn our clients before we see them to know that we can't use big words. We can't use these statements that they're not going to, we have to speak on their level. We have to be on their level, or they'll never respond to us. There will never be a rapport if we don't stay on their level.
Yeah, that's important. Speaking about language, you just remind me just yesterday and today I had to work on a needs assessment survey document that was going to go out to a bunch of people who were receiving services in certain environments. And we had these original questions, and what I had to do was just turn them into common language questions, right? So that they were universal language questions that were mindful of literacy levels and that were just mindful of how people talk, and that didn't have any of the kind of jargony language around service types or systems or mental health or substance use stuff. And so I was really doing quite a bit of language changing in order to get them. And it's kind of, you have to be very thoughtful in trying to get it right, because we want it to be accurate. We want it to be accessible, We also don't want to be in it. We want to appreciate individuals, and different people have different ways of speaking and communicating. And so finding the common language that can be universal does take some time. So it sounds like, Lisa, that's something that you put some energy into, a lot of energy into. And then when we get to the how for you, you're doing things with the what and how you're doing it. It sounds like one of the key pieces for you is choosing your language, using your language really intentionally so that you can make the connection. Yeah.
Our
Yeah.
motto is that we want our clients to work us out of a job.
Mm-hmm.
We want to get them to the point where they can walk out the door and say, I can do this. I can do this. Not somebody else can help me, but I can do this.
Yeah. Yeah. So the why there, the powerful why about independence. So for in your culture and in your story, if we were doing this on this timeline, we would see a really strong sense of why related to independence. And I think we would probably see that same why for many of you, that's at least in part an important thing, that independence is a big piece of what you're striving toward. And that's a really powerful one when we think about history and origin stories. When we think about, just for example, on the mental health side, with mental health services and the level of dependency and institutionalization and deinstitutionalization, and the level of control and power and disempowerment in that history, people making policies, nothing about us without us, all these different ideas around empowerment and giving people control over their own life choices, all big parts of that history, which get us to where we are now and where we're trying to go in the future. I just said those things in relation to some mental health history. There are other frames that we could put on that too. So yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. Who else is thinking about this? What, how, why? Anyone else, others who might want to share in terms of your experience related to that? I'm looking at what Rhonda was saying, currently working and just listening. I work for the county there also. And they're so big, I must keep this personal for myself. All these questions, I replace the we with I in order to stay for the benefit of my peers. Yeah, that's a good, I think that goes back to that alignment issue. That alignment tool we were sharing, Rhonda, which is the I and the we, and then thinking about those different levels. There's the I, then there's the we in terms of the team or program, and then there's the maybe broader organization, depending on the size of the organization. Then there's the broader field or industry, like recovery support services or peer support services or mental health or substance use services or human services. These are kind of bigger circles. And then there's that broader community in terms of the values and the vision. So thinking about a level of alignment or sometimes misalignment, right? Some of you might feel like islands. We have a certain vision and we have a certain culture, and our culture is kind of like a counterculture to the culture that it surrounds it. And that can be kind of stressful. It can also be energizing when people feel like they have a strong mission to try to change something bigger, right? That can be part of the mission. And it can also be tiring and draining and stressful when you feel like you're not aligned with that bigger culture. You see that a lot, I think, in programs that have peer supports that are in maybe a more traditional medical kind of a service system, where you feel like your culture is quite different from the culture that surrounds you. And is that stressful and challenging to your culture, to your team, to yourself? Danny just shared quite a expansive chat here. 1-year-old transition to treatment program working with the New Jersey State Police, provide a linkage to care for arrest, non-arrest model. That's street outreach by our advocates and troopers. We also assist with benefits, detox, rehab. Afterwards, in sober living, finally with regular follow-up with our current and past clients, we assist funding for treatment. We assist them with gaining IDs, other documents, We use data to go out in these hard-hit areas in New Jersey, doing outreach and naloxone distribution to hit hotspots, locations of documented overdoses, et cetera, to anyone with an SUD throughout all of New Jersey. So this is a really good example in the what and how, right? So this is the list. This is the list of things. There's this and the sequence of things for how we might be connecting with people, the what and the how, and then of course Danny has some reasons why, some values as to why this this program is doing what it's doing, and it's a 1-year-old program. So where it has been is relatively short. It probably has some origins and some other things, but it's got a short history. It's easier to understand your origin story when it's in the very near past, right? So that one's probably pretty clear for that team. It's got a clear origin story because it's just got started. So we just have a couple more minutes. I want to see if there's any other final comments that anyone would like to share in terms of any parts of this, where, what, how, why, and where that we're talking about. Where have you been? Where are you going? What do you do? How do you do it? Why do you do it?
Hi, can you hear me? Can you
Yes,
see me?
we can hear and see you, Michelle.
Okay, great. I think this is an awesome topic. I remember working, just working in social service field so long in different venues, and I recognized immediately, and I come to any environment with respect, compassion, and a supportive nature. But what I recognized, I was working at the methadone clinic, and I saw immediately that wasn't my genre. But, and I've had a substance abuse history, but I shifted over, and I thank God it happened for me. I shifted over to NAMI Chicago because, I have anxiety and depression, and being sober made that really be known, my my mental health conditions. And so just being in their environment where you can openly, freely, and honestly say how you feel and what's going on, and not be in fear that you're going to lose your job. So I see that this company is growing. I know it's in every suburb or wherever, it's national, but I'm just talking about my little company up on the north side of Chicago, where when I started there 3 years ago, it was like about 6 or 7 of us. Now they have expanded, and they picking, they found youth programs and school programs and senior program, disability program. So they were showing today just the different avenues that our little company is going in. And so, I really feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Michelle. And where I'm supposed to be is a powerful statement of that alignment that you feel with your team, like with your organization. I fit here. And you gave several of the reasons in terms of the why that is, and the core values of the culture, the kind of the open sharing, right? And the open sharing because there isn't the stigma that might exist in other environments if you engaged in that open sharing, where people might be there might be an ignorance or misinterpretations, which could create the third element that I was noticing, which is the safety. You have it's a safe environment. There's psychological safety, and in other environments, if you shared in open ways, because of that stigma, there wouldn't be safety. But that's not the case in this environment. There is safety because it's not stigmatized, so people can be themselves and be honest and open about their experiences.
I'm telling you, it's not about productivity. A lot of companies, you better get those numbers. And some days, because of my anxiety, I'm not there. And so with this company, I've only had about 6 or 7 clients, and it's awesome. I'm able to
Good.
do quality work. I'm able to
Good.
be purposeful and mindful. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
thank you. Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. I appreciate you sharing. I see our time is about up. I just want to say that I have just so appreciated this conversation. It's been very meaningful for me. I hope it has been for others as well. Chris, I wanted to give you a chance to share as well as we wind down for today.
Just thank you everybody for spending the last hour with us. The next session is next week. I will not be here, but Matt will be, along with Cindy Christie, and I will get a reminder out early that morning just in case you misplaced your link to join. But otherwise, it was a great discussion, and I
Yeah.
love hearing about what everybody's doing.
Yeah, thank you all for giving us a chance to learn from you and for your sharing. And we'll talk about some new tools next time and we'll keep going, okay? Have a great week, everyone.